name is Seth Juarez, and I'm so glad that you are here with us on the AI show, this Cinco de Mayo edition. How exciting. Many of you may not know this, but I have an ancestor that fought in the Cinco de Mayo thing. His name was Coronel Don Antonio G. Esperon. Awesome guy. So pretty excited about this episode. We have a couple of things going on, so why don't we just jump right in. Number one, we're going to be talking to Shawn Henry about Semantic Kernel. So Semantic Kernel and agents plus agents with Shawn Henry. So make sure you stay tuned for that one. And then number two, we're going to be talking about the VS Code extension for Azure AI Foundry. And that's with my friend April Spate. So that's what we got for you today on this episode of the AI show. I'm pretty excited about it. Again, the Cinco de Mayo edition for everyone. So let's start first with Shawn Henry and Semantic Kernel. Take it away. You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI show where we talk all about Semantic Kernel's agent framework with my friend Shawn Henry. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI show where we're talking all about Semantic Kernel's agent framework with my friend Shawn Henry. How you doing, Shawn?
Great. I'm super excited about agents. Let's do it.
I know. I am too. But before me and Shawn work together, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, so Seth and I work together a lot. We both work together on Azure Foundry, which is our AI platform, and specifically I work on Semantic Kernel, which is our library, our SDK, our agent development kit for pro code developers to build agents and AI applications.
I love it. We've worked on a ton of stuff together, so it's really cool to have you on the show. Why don't we start with sort of explaining what Semantic Kernel is, and then maybe this agent stuff, maybe you can get into a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So Semantic Kernel, we're an SDK. It's an open source project. You can go and get it on. You can go to GitHub. You can see our project there. You can get it from your favorite package repository. We have development kits for .NET, for Python, and for Java. And what we really are is we're an orchestration framework for your AI applications and for your agents. And that means we build these abstraction layers for all the tools and services you need to build your AI and agent applications. So if you need to talk to Azure OpenAI or all the models that are in Foundry Catalog, or even all the models from non-Microsoft services like all the models on Hugging Face or DeepSeek or even Google and AWS, you can connect to all those models. You can connect to local models if you want to run stuff locally on your machine. You just connect to those, and then all the rest of your code stays exactly the same in Semantic Kernel. The same thing with memory services like vector stores. We're talking about agents. We actually allow you to connect to agents hosted in managed services, like the services we have in Foundry with the Azure AI Agent Service, but also services in AWS and Crew AI, and then create plugins into things like MCP and OpenAI and connect those into your applications to make it really easy to take your existing code and services and build agents and AI applications with them.
It sounds like the Swiss Army knife for working with agents and LLMs. Would that be an accurate description?
It really is. It's your toolbox. And then, the thing we really focus on is making sure that toolbox is enterprise ready. So we have things like connectivity to OpenTelemetry, so you can see how your agents and your AI applications are being used. You can observe them and monitor them and evaluate them with all the tools that are available from services like Azure Foundry.
So this is amazing. I love it. You're setting the stage for what Semantic Kernel is. I've heard a lot of definitions for what it means to be agentic. How does Semantic Kernel enable agentic behavior? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I like to say that we built agents before they were cool, before they were called agents with Semantic Kernel. If you think of the three things that kind of make an agent, one is the ability to reason over a process. So that's your LLM, your model. So, we have these AI services you can talk to. That's your LLM. It's got some memory or some context. This might be your vector store. Maybe it's doing search in the vector store or from some other knowledge base. And then the thing that really separates an agent from, just calling a large language model is the ability to use tools. And this is where, as part of your prompt to the model, you give it a bunch of tools it can use. Oh, you can call this API, or you can use this component to solve the problem you're trying to solve. So now you have something that's agentic. It can take action on something, and the control flow now is in your LLM. And that's what Semantic Kernel makes really easy, is that you can connect to either existing services through OpenAPI, MCP, or you can connect it to places in your code by annotating your code with tools, and those flow right into your LLM, and then like magic, the Semantic Kernel will just call those for you.
I feel like there would be a spectrum of LLM kind of applications, because early on I just used whatever the thing returned and did control flow based on that. But agentic is a little bit more than that, because it enables tool calling. Well, my sense is that once you start composing these things together, you're getting like these really big systems. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned things as being agentic, and you kind of move from very simple things, which are kind of these agents that maybe aren't actually even making tool calls, all the way up to these, larger agents where you start adding more capabilities, more tools. You're doing things like agent RAG, where you're having an agent do search for you and return results. But then the next step is into multi-agent systems, where you have these agents collaborating together, either kind of figuring out the plan on their own. You have like a coordinator agent that then uses these other agents kind of like tools to solve the problem, or you have like a process or a graph that you've defined, and you have your agents working together and handing off things from one agent to another to solve the problem.
All right, so as I'm looking at this, because you brought a really good slide, the thing that I was talking about, the first is just using an LLM prompt to do something. A single agent is the thing that does more than that. I don't see the function calling indicated anyway here. Can you help us sort of bridge that gap?
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's these little arrows here coming out of these agents. So like in this case, in the single agent, where the agent is making that call into your data store, like this might be a vector database. It's actually using a tool call to search into that database. Or you can see over here in this multi-agent system, you have an agent that's talking to a web service, or maybe it's searching the web, or over here to like a database. One that's really interesting is having these agents that can actually run code inside a container. I'm sure you've had experience, Seth, where like these large language models seem super smart and they fail at basic math.
Yeah.
But one of the things they're really good at, which we all know, is writing the code to solve that math. So like a great thing to do if you have any sort of analytical work, like generating charts or something like that, you actually have an agent that can maybe generate Python code that it can then run in a container to generate those charts or to do calculations for you.
Yeah, and I love the way that this sort of goes from the spectra of, I said spectra because it's plural, right?
That's a word. I think that's a word, Seth.
I know. From the simple, like we're just using an LLM as an LLM, to hey, we're using an LLM to make decisions about what to execute, to hey, we're using a composition of multiple programs with potentially different LLMs composing together to build a multi-agent system. I love the grow up story here.
That's right. And that's a really good point you mentioned around different LLMs. Like when you have a multi-agent system, you can choose, which agent uses which large language model. Maybe you have these new reasoning models in your coordinator agent, and then you have these specific small language models for some of the other services. And then with a multi-agent system, what we've seen is you get kind of better overall performance than just building a giant agent with a single model.
Yeah, because I mean, you could choose models that are good at specific things to do specific tasks and then aggregate it together. It feels like a new programming model, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's all these dials you can turn to really tune your system.
So as I'm looking at this, right, because we're saying new programming model and we're saying a semantic kernel, I feel like we need to look at like, what does this actually look like when we're like putting, code to paper, as it were? What do we got?
You want to see some code, Seth? Is that what
yes,
you're saying?
I want to see. I'm trying to like find a fancy way to be like, can you show me how it works? All right, so let's take a look.
Let's take a look. Okay, so I mean, the first sample here is like just the very basic agent, like that slide I showed right on the left, the most basic agent. When you use something like semantic kernel, this is in Python here. You just pip install semantic kernel, and within 10 lines of code, you can be building an agent. So we can see here in lines 7, 8, and 9. This is all it takes. All I'm doing, I'm creating my agent here. This is a type of agent we have in semantic kernel called a chat completion agent. I'm binding it here to the Azure chat completion service. So this is Azure OpenAI. It's pulling in all my keys and authentication from my .m file. And then I give it a name. and then I give it some instructions. And then if it's just a one shot, I just call the agent just like this.
So,
but I want to move over right
hold
away
on before we get there, because before we go there, because this just looks like the same thing we did before when we were just calling the OpenAI SDK. It almost feels like a one-to-one thing, right?
It is, but that's where you start, and so it's a great way. My kind of recommendation is to start with agents, because your application is going to grow, and as it gets more complicated, and as you want to compose different things together, if you start with an agent, even if it's a very simple thing like just calling an LLM, that gives you space to grow your application into these agentic frameworks.
I actually love the fact that you're getting started with something that we've seen, because now you're going to start to get into something that we haven't seen that builds upon this. Am I right or am I wrong?
That's right. Yeah. And here's where it gets really cool. This is what sold me on Semantic Kernel, is the ability to have it actually use your existing code. So we have exactly the same thing that we saw before, except now there's 2 extra lines. One is I've given it a plugin, and I've given it some arguments in terms of our response format. So let's look at the plugin thing first. So first of all, what is this menu plugin? So we're building an assistant, an agent that we can ask questions about, like a hypothetical menu. We're going to ask it, what is the soup special and its price? So how does it know that? Well, it needs a database. So we kind of simulate our database up here with a class that has 2 functions, one that gets our list of specials, 3 specials, and then gets the price for a particular special. And you see I've added some annotations to this. I've added these kernel function annotations. These are things that tell Semantic Kernel that these are functions that we want the LLM to be able to call. And we give it some metadata about what these functions actually do. And then we pass that into our agent. So it now has this tool it knows how to use. And then we also tell it with these arguments that instead of returning as a string, when you talk to an LLM, it's going to give you a human readable response. But when you're integrating with your existing code, maybe you want that in structured data. Maybe you want to come back as JSON. Maybe you want to come back as a structure. So here, we have this menu item that is going to return our data as. So let's run this real quick, and we'll see how this works. I have a couple breakpoints set that'll trigger. And so what's going on? What Semantic Kernel does? We build this agent, we put it together, and it's going to take here. We're hitting this breakpoint right here. It's when we call the agent here, so we're calling it with the same message that we did before. It's going to take all of those tools and all of our prompts. It's going to bundle it up, and it's going to send it to the large language model. And the large language model, GPT-4o mini, I think in this case, is going to say, it's going to try to answer the problem, and it's going to say, oh, well, actually, I need to call this tool you've given me called get specials, and it'll return that result. Semantic Kernel will intercept that and then call into your live code in order to call that function that you've defined. So here our breakpoint is getting hit with our code, where it's returning that list of specials. And so we can see that it's asking, if we look at, it's going to return that list of specials. That's going to go back to the LLM, and then it's going to call back again to ask for the price of a particular special. So we asked it for the soup special. So we can see here, if we look at the menu item parameter that came in, it's now asking us for the price of the soup special. We're going to return $9.99, and then we can see the LLM. It returns that not in a natural language format, which we want sometimes if we're talking to a user.
Right.
But if we want it to talk to other places within our application, it returns it as a structure that we can use and then pass to other APIs in our AI application, our agent application.
It's cool. Can you scroll down? There was one thing the settings bit. What is that? What is that setting? That's the part. Oh, I see. So if you scroll up, the settings is an execution settings, and it's just basically saying the response format needs to be of this shape.
Great, you caught me, Seth. I forgot to mention that part in line 30 here.
Cool.
Yeah. So what we're saying is that it's going to be this menu item type, which we've defined up here, which has a price that's a float and a name that's a string. And so it's always going to return in that format. So you don't have to parse the results from your large language model. We'll do that for you. It's directly in a structure you can use in the rest of your application.
Yeah, this is cool because it allows you to actually not have to, because a lot of the other calls require, let me put our faces up here, our faces. It required, before you would have to wire all these JSON object things and put them everywhere. This kind of makes it a little softer around the edges, I think.
Yeah, I really see it as a way of interfacing, how can I use agents and LLMs in my existing code that I've been building over years. And how do I get it to interface to kind of more structured programming models?
I love it. So this makes sense to me because now we moved from the thing that we know to a thing that we know plus plus that now is agentic, right? How do we like I imagine like I'm creating like before I used to create a bunch of classes to do stuff and then I would have them talk to each other. What does that look like if I'm building a bunch of agents that now need to talk to each other? So what do you got for that?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is with Semantic Kernel, it looks, exactly the same. So like this is a sample here where we built a 3-agent system. So like similar to that diagram I showed. And we define this is a multi-agent system that is that processes like a customer service system. So it's got a billing agent that knows more about handling billing requests. We got a refund agent that knows about handling refunds. And then we have this triage agent, which is the agent that handles delegating the task to each particular agent. And we give that agent as tools. We showed plugins before. We showed that menu plugin. We actually give that agent these other agents as tools. So now that agent has these agents it can use to delegate to when it has a particular task to run. So like when we run that, the user request is going to come in, to that top level agent, the one that's at the top. And we're going to ask it to do something. In this case, I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say I was charged twice for my subscription last month. Like, can I get a refund? And what it's going to do is so there's 2 things in that request. One is like I have a problem with my bill and I want a refund. So it's going to go to each of those agents in turn, and you can see here that it's asking the billing agent some questions about the subscription, the bill, and is asking the refund agent how to process agents. It's going to call each of those agents, and then it's going to create a synthesized response from both of those, and then send that back to the user. So that's how like a multi-agent system can work with agents as tools.
I see, and this is one of the realizations that was actually pretty powerful for me, where it's like, hey, if a thing can call a thing with function calling, then an agent can call another agent via function calling as well, right, which makes it like implicitly orchestrated is what I'm calling it, like implicit agentic orchestration. Do you like that naming? Should we make it stick?
Yeah, let's see if we can make it stick.
Okay.
I just agents as tools seem simpler to me, but implicit, yeah, I can see that happen.
Okay, I know it just sounds fancier. I mean, then consultants can make more money, right?
That's right. Yeah, they get paid by the word, don't they?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. This is cool. I really like it. So what else do you have to show us? Because like this feels like it's just semantic kernel, but there's a lot of other stuff out there as well. Does semantic kernel play well with those things?
Yeah, well, so yeah, of course. So in these multi-agent systems, you can have this is our chat completion agent, and this we can use Azure AI services, OpenAI. We can use OpenAI directly, but we can actually have these agents be agents from other services. So, for example, this could be I could have made this a Bedrock agent with AWS. I could have made it a Crew AI agent, or I could have made it be one of the managed agents that we host in Foundry. So there's all those options when you're building these multi-agent systems to have agents from different services all interact together. And in fact, one thing I wanted to show is like how we can have those agents all work together as a team using a technique that was pioneered by AutoGen, which is our research framework at Microsoft for multi-agent systems.
Yeah, let's take a look.
So this is actually a video. I recorded this, and I recorded it on purpose because something interesting happened. So I'm just going to play it as it goes through. But the way Magentic 1 works is a multi-agent system. But one of the things it does that's neat is that orchestrator agent at the top has a task ledger. So it keeps track of how much progress its kind of subordinate agents are making. And then if they're not making enough progress, it tries a different technique to solve the problem. So when I run this here, I built all those agents just like I did before. I'm putting them together in this agent team, and I have like an agent that can search the web, an agent that can do math, and I'm asking it like a complex problem here. Calculate the distribution of the top 20 largest cities in the USA. So it's got to go search. It's got to find that data. It's got to find the top 20 largest cities in the USA. It's going to do some search with things like grounding with Bing. It's going to bring those results back in, and then it's got to do some calculations on top of that. So the first thing it does when it runs is it generates a plan. It says, okay, well, I'm going to have to search for this data, and then I'm going to have to normalize it, and then I'm going to have to build a chart out of it. So the first thing it did is search for the data, use one of its sub agents that specializes in search, got the results here from this website. We can see it came from no insiders. We got the data. We can see as it's going on. One of the powerful things with Semantic Kernel is that it's telling us as it's going along how many tokens it's using. So I mentioned like observability. We can see all that kind of stuff. And here it's outputting it to the console, but that could be going up to your telemetry service. So it's now calculated the distributions of all those cities, and now it's asking for a visual representation. And the interesting thing that happened when I was setting this demo up is there was user error. I didn't give the Illustrator agent the right keys to use the service it needed to generate the image. So it's failing here. You can see as it's going through this text, it's saying, hey, I'm experiencing technical difficulties. I can't do this. And the orchestrator agent says, well, try harder. Like, see if you can do this.
Yeah.
And it's not working. And so it tries it a couple times. And the orchestrator agent at some point says, and you can see here now, it's calculating a new plan. It's saying, oh, this isn't working. The Illustrator agent's not working for me. Let's see if I can figure something else out. So it generates a new plan. And then now it says, okay, I'm going to produce a clear ASCII representation. So it's not using a graphical interface now. It's just generating the chart in ASCII. So it was able to work around problems. If one of the particular agents is failing, maybe your service isn't working, not configured properly like I did, it can now work around it and still solve the problem.
This is cool. For me, the thing that I like the most is that now I have something that can work around my demo fails if I'm ever doing a demo, which is really cool. So we saw
this is demo fails as a feature.
Oh, demo fails! I love it. I love it. So we saw some code in Python. I think we saw some C# here, but for .NET, Aspire is like the latest and greatest. Or do we have anything for that?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things with multi-agent systems is like once you build all these agents, it's great to kind of model them as microservices. And Aspire is a great framework for deployment and for monitoring your microservices. So we have samples in our repo that show you how to use our process framework and Aspire to build agents that are modeled as microservices. So our process framework is more about, instead of having your agent decide on the plan, if you want to model an existing business process where you don't want to have the agents building a plan, you want to have particular steps that are followed, you can use this process framework format for that. And it gives you much more control over the steps. Like sometimes you don't want the agent to try and solve the problem on itself. You want it to work in a particular order. So in this case, we have a process that takes an incoming document and then summarizes it, and then translates it first, and then summarizes it. So it's got 3 steps in the process. It's got one agent that gets the document. It's got one agent that translates it, and one agent that summarizes it. So in this case, we build these steps and we connect these agents together, and then we build those together into a process, and then we can deploy those with Aspire, and they'll each get modeled as as a microservice. So here we're creating the process, and we're starting it and giving it some data to kind of kick it off.
So as it's going, this is super cool. So in this case, you are forcing it to do a certain step. Oh, sorry. What are we looking at here?
Oh yeah. So now we got the Aspire dashboard, and I love the Aspire dashboard because it gives you really kind of intimate details of everything that's going on with your processes. So here we've kicked off, and we can see we've got our 3 agents. We've got our process orchestrator, and we've got our summarizer and our translator. And we can see, because they're modeled as microservices, we can see like all the calls going back and forth between them. We can see the HTTP requests between them. And Aspire did all the deployment for us. It managed all the keys. It's managing all the calls between the services, and that's all happening in our microservice system. But then we can also see each of our agents, and we can see how long each of them are taking to execute. So we can see, like in this case, when I made this call, we can see our entire composite action is taking 11.58 seconds. But then we can break it down, and we can see that the translator agent is taking 8.5 seconds, and that our summary agent is taking about 3 seconds. So we can see, okay, maybe our translator agent for some reason is taking a lot longer, and that's something we want to look at. And then we can also obviously see in our logs how many tokens or how much usage or what the prompt looks like for each of our agents. So it's a great way to have some observability into multi-agent systems.
This is actually amazing. I love the fact that not only do we get to see like advanced agentics because we went from like a single agent to multiple agents that are composed by function calling to then something called the process framework, which tells it like, hey, you need to call these things first and in this order, and then to actually deploying and having useful visibility into how the applications work. It's pretty cool. Shawn, where can people go to find out more?
Yeah, for sure. So I think first and foremost, I would say, check out our GitHub repo at Semantic Kernel. You can search
right
GitHub
here.
for Semantic Kernel.
Yep.
Or you can go to our Learn site. So we have Microsoft documentation. You can find all sorts of documentation and samples. Between the Learn site and our GitHub, we have over 200 samples for agents in both C# and Python that you can go and try. And then finally, like, please join us every week. We have office hours for Semantic Kernel, and the engineering team is there, and you can talk to us. We'll show you the latest new features that we're creating. We're adding new features every week, and you can ask us questions about building agents with Semantic Kernel.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Cool. Nice to chat, Seth.
As always, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you so much for watching and learning all about Semantic Kernel's agent framework with my friend Shawn Henry. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care. All right, my friends, you just saw Shawn Henry really explain to us Semantic Kernel and some of the benefits of using it for agentic type applications. Now we'll turn it over to April Spate to talk about Visual Studio Code and the Azure AI Foundry extension. Take it away. You're not going to want to miss this episode of the AI Show where we talk all about the Azure AI Foundry extension for Visual Studio Code with my friend April Spate. Make sure you tune in. Hello and welcome to this episode of the AI Show. We're talking all about the Azure AI Foundry extension for Visual Studio Code. My friend April Spate. April, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. And yourself?
Fantastic. April is one of my fun friends because she knows my wife like through different, and it's like the intersection of all the goodness and so it's so good to have you on the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Awesome. So we're talking about the Azure AI Foundry extension for Visual Studio Code. Why don't you give us a beat or two on what it is and how it's supposed to help developers?
All right. So if you heard about the Azure AI Foundry, most likely you've probably done things with Foundry in the portal, in the browser, the UI version that we have. Well, for those who've been wondering, oh man, I wish I could do this in VS Code more, or just in general, if I could do it in VS Code, well, guess what? We have an extension for you that you can actually have a lot of the fun you're having in Azure AI Foundry portal, but now in Visual Studio Code with the extension. And so today I'm here to share with you the features that we have available in there. We're going to take a look at the model playgrounds as you're exploring models and trying to figure out which one you want to use for whatever you're building. We're also going to be creating an agent. I know agents are huge right now, and so we do have that capability as well in the extension. So overall, you could think about the extension as having that Azure AI Foundry experience, but in Visual Studio Code.
I see. And I loved how you took two beats there on one, like dealing with models. You can do that now in Visual Studio Code, is what you're telling me. And the second is actually creating and using agents. I feel like I need to take a look at this. Have you brought something to show us?
Of course I did. All right, so here we are in Visual Studio Code. I already had the extension downloaded, but if you're just giving this a try for the first time, you're going to want to head to the extension section and search for Azure AI Foundry. And this is what it's going to look like when it's up. Now, Seth, there is a little bit of setup, and the reason being is that we need to make sure that we're working with our existing project that we have in Azure Foundry. So once you have the actual extension downloaded and installed, you're going to actually use the Azure extension to sign in. I'm already signed in, so I won't share the goodies that our team has around the projects.
Right.
But essentially, as a heads up, you'll need to sign in and you'll be able to try things out, assuming you already have a project. Now, you'll see here at the top, I have my default project selected. And so you can change that default project. You can just right click that and then you can switch. That'll bring you back over to the Azure extension. And from there, you can select the project that you're going to work with. So from a starting point, this is the very, very start of using the extension is selecting the project that you're going to want to work in.
I love it. Before we go on, can I ask you, so tell me about the project system. So Azure AI Foundry, I'm assuming you can create a bunch of projects. Can you tell us about that for just a second?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're actually going to start a little higher with than that with the hub itself. So the hub can have multiple projects in it. So like as a perfect real world example, in our team right now, we have a hub resource and we can have multiple projects in it. So like let's
Okay.
say you and I are in the same like team. I can have my own project that's using the same resources that your project's using as well. And it's really helpful because we're able to also share models, which is what we have in our current setup too. So
I
a
see.
hub can have multiple projects in it, and we're working at the project level for using the Foundry extension.
Which makes a ton of sense because as a dev, right, when we're deving on the stuff, we're usually in a single project, and then when we content switch to another project, we can do that in the extension.
Yep, yep, absolutely,
I
sure
love it.
can.
Sorry for
Yeah,
interrupting.
no problem. No, no problem. Interrupt anytime. So I'm going to just take you on a tour of what's happening here in the interface for the extension. So we have this division of three different sections. The top half, we have the resources, which where I have my cursor at right now. That's where not only can you see what project you have, but also where you can access all the models that you may already have deployed. That's also where you can see any agents that are currently in the project, as well as any of the threads from the conversations that are being held with your agents. And we'll explore that today. Before I get to that, though, I also want to call out the other two sections. The next one down is going to be the tools section. And so right now we have three tools in there. One's the model catalog. So we'll explore that when we look at some models. The model playground, which is where you can go and chat with your models. And there's even like now to me like a little bonus treat in there for an experience that you don't quite get in the portal, but you get in the extension. That's where you can compare responses across two models. So that's pretty cool. And then we have the agent playground as well. So once you've created your agent and you want to test that out, you can do that in the agent playground. And then below, just before we start having fun, is just that feedback or the help and feedback section. So documentation is easily accessible there by selecting that documentation link. And then just below that, if you select GitHub, that'll take you to the repo. If you have any issues with the extension itself, go there and submit an issue. And one of the wonderful folks from the engineering team will definitely check that out and hopefully get you unblocked or resolve any issue that you might be running to. So I know there's not a lot to see right now until I start opening things up, Seth. So how about we start opening up some of these tabs that we have?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I like to show up to my dev environment in a pristine way, and so I love how this is like, here's what you got. What do you want to start with? And I love the tour that you're taking us on. So what are we
Oh,
starting with?
absolutely. Yes, I feel like Vanna White. So the first thing we're going to look at.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, we're going to look at some models because I want to show you all just how similar the experience is in the extension compared to exploring models like you would in the browser. So I mentioned earlier that we do have models that we are sharing in our own team across our resource. And as you can see, I have a lot to choose from. And so with these models, if I were to select one of them, let's say GPT-4o, for example, I'm going to get the model card for the model. So this is something that you'll also see if you're using Foundry in the browser. But here in the extension, I also get this information as well. And I can also edit any of the deployed models too. And if I were to open up that edit file, I'll just open it for you. This is where I can adjust my rate limits as well, which sometimes we kind of need to do that depending on
Right.
what we're building, you know. But from there, you can go ahead and save it. Since I didn't make changes, let me not mess up anything there.
Mhm.
But so you'll get this information for all the models that are here. Now, let's say I want to go explore models. Let's say I don't have anything deployed yet. Well, that's where this model catalog will come into play. So let me close that up and go over to the model catalog because this is where I can see all the models that we have available that we can deploy. And so you can explore, you know, all the ones that we have, figure out which one works best for you and your use case. We have some options in here for filtering, whether it's by publisher or task. There's a lot of tasks to choose from, by the way. And then
I know.
you can also search. Which ones do you find yourself using most often, Seth, for all the different tasks? Because you build some very
For
cool things.
me, I'm usually using a lot of like GPT-4o, but I'm starting to get
Mhm.
into the multimodal stuff. So like for example, I saw
Mm.
you had the latest GPT image one, so I was going to start playing with that one myself. And so yeah, I love the text. I love the ones that can do function calling, and I love the ones that can do like multimedia.
Got it. I'm simple. I'm a very simple lady. I have been using 4.0 for like everything, but I'm going to start venturing out a little bit more, hopefully soon, as I'm starting to just build some just fun samples just for fun lately. So hopefully I get a chance to explore a little more like you are. But yeah, so with that said, we have 108 models here to choose from. And literally once you're ready to deploy, you get the option to deploy in Azure. I'm just going to click O3. I won't deploy it, but just so you can see what that experience is like in here. Once you select deploy in Azure, we will then take you through a little wizard. You'll choose your service. You'll choose the version of the model. So if there's more than one version for a model, they'll all display here. You can select whichever one is most applicable to what you're building. You'll choose a deployment type, and then you'll give it a name. Now, right after this step, it gives me a prompt that says, are you sure you want to deploy, or something to that effect.
Right.
I'm not going to do another deployment, so we're going to pretend, use our imagination like I had deployed it.
Right.
But that's the process for deploying in here. Now, if you recall, when I went to go look at that other model earlier that I had open for 4.0, we're going to get the model card once we have that deployment. And if we need to adjust anything, like I mentioned, like the rate limits, for example, we'll click that edit button, edit that, save it, and then we can go ahead about our business with trying things out with the model.
That's cool. So you have the sort of the end-to-end model experience, right, in Visual Studio Code, where you can download it, you can look at a model, and then you can push a model to your project.
Yep, absolutely.
Love it.
So with that said, we probably want to play with a model, right?
Let's do it.
And so let me go through a different way. There's actually multiple ways you can go about trying models out in the playground. Let me close this guy up here. So GPT 4.0, for example, let's say I've deployed that. I want to try some things out with a couple of prompts, and I can right click on that, and we get some different options here. We're going to focus right now on the playground. So you would select that there. Alternatively, though, as you probably saw, you could also just go to the model playground down here. But if you select open in playground, it'll give you a playground. Now, for those of you who are tuning in and you might be familiar with some of our other tools like the AI toolkit, you'll notice the playground does look similar. And that's because it is leveraging the same playground from the AI toolkit as well. So yeah, so you're going to get a very similar experience. You'll notice when I go to select this drop down here in a bit, you'll see some of my other models from AI Toolkit, and those are pulling models from GitHub models. But in any case, I can test things out that I have from Foundry here. So just here at that bottom section is where I have the models that I have from Foundry. I have this one set up here for 4.0 that's good and ready to go, and I can go ahead and test things out. So let's say I gave it some context. Lately, Seth, I don't know, did you ever watch Zoom like at all? I think that show, like, they're like based in Canada. It's like the kids like variety show. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I am not as cultured as some of my colleagues, apparently.
It's okay.
So tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's this show. Oh wait, it wasn't in Canada. They were based in Boston. That's where they were. And it was like a kind of like variety show where they do different skits. But there's one thing that they do on there is they speak this language called ubby-dubby. And so lately, when I've been testing models out, I've been giving them the instructions to provide responses in ubby-dubby.
I have heard of that incident. I don't know how I've heard of that, but I have heard of that bit. So maybe I have seen it.
Okay, maybe. So that's what we're going to pass in today as a context instruction. So anytime I ask this model to give me a response, it's going to give it back to me in ubby-dubby. So that's what we're going to give a try today. And so yeah, I don't know why I've landed on that one day. It just came to mind. So I had the instructions there. If I wanted to change the parameters, I could, and then I can give it the prompt. I can say, when is Easter, since we're like right in spring. Let's see. And there we have our answer. And that's literally ubby-dubby on the screen, everyone, in case you want to pick up another language to learn. But it gives me the response. Great. So hopefully anyone watching this, hopefully you probably give that a try too for your context instructions. It's just my little piece of fun when I'm trying things out.
Now a question, is this hitting the models that you've deployed? You just get to pick the model and you're just basically sort of testing out the models, but in your local Visual Studio Code environment. Is that actually what's happening?
Yep, and that's what I am doing here. And I did mention earlier that we have a little extra fun in this experience with the extension because since we're leveraging the playground feature that's in the AI toolkit, although we're working with Azure AI Foundry, we get this compare feature. And so this compare feature will enable you to actually compare two models at one time. You can submit the prompt once, and then it'll give you the output at the same time. So I have one that's set up. Let me just make sure I'm grabbing the right one. I think it's 4.1 mini. Yeah. So we can do the comparison here. So on the left-hand side, I have 4.0. On the right-hand side, I have 4.1 mini. And if I were to pass in a prompt that says, I like using this one to write me a limerick about VS Code. And there we go. I literally have a response. As you can see, I only had to type that prompt in one box. I didn't have to like type in both.
That's cool.
This is also a really great way to just compare output from models as well.
Yeah, and not only compare outputs, but maybe even speed, because you're going to be able to tell right away if one is faster than the other and if it's good.
Yes, absolutely. So this is the model experience with exploring models, deploying models, testing models out in the playground. And then in addition to that, the other thing that you can also do in here is grab the code for a model. So let's say heading back to just like 4.0, I don't know why I keep opening that, but if I right click on that and click open code file, what it's going to do is take me through another wizard. We love our wizards in VS Code. But this is where you're going to answer a couple of questions. And from there, it's going to generate the actual code for you to go use your model. So whether you want to use the Azure AI Model Inference Client Library or the Azure Open AI and Foundry Models Client Library, it's going to determine what the code generated looks like. So let's just select that. You can then choose your language as well. Python is my favorite. And then also the authentication method too. So whether you want to do Intra ID, which I recommend, or you can also do key authentication, whichever one you select, what it's going to do next is actually give you the Python file in my case, since I selected Python. And now from here, I can go ahead and test things out and really start doing things a lot more with code at this step. So this is a pretty great as well. I do believe in Foundry in the browser experience. You can also get the code too, but you can also get it here in VS Code. So.
Yeah, and since that's where I do most of my dev work, right? It's cool that it just literally just shuttles it into that.
Yep, absolutely. So that's just another thing. I have more to share. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the way that you can do code, and you can do models, and you can play in the playground, and you can compare. That's awesome. But I'm hearing that the next generation of this stuff is agentic.
Yes.
And I see some agents and threads there. Can you walk us through some of the functionality there?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just not save this document. Let me close this playground. I'll keep the model catalog open. So if I already have any agents in my existing project, they're going to show up here in this agents area. And if I twirl that down, I see I actually do have two agents. We're going to explore this AI news agent one a little later. But essentially, if I already have agents in my project, they're all going to display here. I can also create agents from the extension as well. Just like you can do that in the browser within Foundry, you can also do it here by selecting Create New Agent. And then you can test them out in the playground. So we're just going to create a very simple agent together. But after we've created that one, I'm going to show you what the experience looks like testing one out that has a tool that's also been added to it. But from just a getting started perspective, you'll select that Create New Agent button, and then you need to decide where you want to save it. You need to give the file a name as well. So sorry about that. I'm going to call this demo agent. We'll just keep it simple. And we'll save that file. Now, there's two things that's going to happen. One, the file saves. The second is that you're going to get these two different files, if you will, or windows that are opened up. On the left-hand side, we get the YAML file for the agent itself. And let me actually close this a bit so we can get a little more real estate on the screen. So on the left-hand side, you'll get the YAML file for the agent. And on the right-hand side, we're going to get, if you're familiar with VS Code, you know how you can do that preview on the side if you're working with like markdown files and such. Like it's kind of almost like that, but
Yes.
you can actually like enter things into this form that's on the right. So whether you're more comfortable working directly with the YAML file or doing things over here on the right-hand side, I tend to flip back and forth depending on what field I'm editing, but you'll be able to edit accordingly.
Yeah.
I would say.
Here's a
Yeah.
fun fact that you may not know. I actually worked on the spec for this
Oh,
file format.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, so sometimes they
tiny
let me
world.
do stuff, and so
We have a
yeah,
superstar on the
I got to
show.
participate. No, I got to participate in the spec, and it's cool because my sense is that as developers, we want to be able to check in our stuff,
Yeah.
even if it's an agent definition, but we also want to be able to edit it in a nice way, and this kind of
Yeah.
gives us the best of both worlds, I think.
Yeah, I personally like it. And so yeah, so you're going to get both of these will show when you create your new agent. And then from there, we need to just start filling some things out. So on the left-hand side, we have the name of it. We can give a description for the agent. I'll just say an agent that gets the weather and recommends an outfit. Very simple.
Right.
And then from there, the ID itself will populate when we actually go to deploy it. So we're not going to fill that out. We can also provide the author for the agent. So if I were to put my name there, for example, I never use these tags in here, Seth. Do you know what these tags are for?
Yeah, so the tags for me are a way of, for example, because once you start building, this is my opinion. When
Mhm.
I made this part of the spec, the idea was that you're eventually going to have so many of these that you're going to want to be able to pull them up by like is what kind of agent is this? Is an agent for working with our I don't know, with our customers? Is an agent for working with our
Mhm.
support people? Is this like a documentation kind of thing? And so that was the general idea.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. I have a much better idea now of that. And as we continue to move down, I think I might have, oops, I think this ID, one of these IDs is for the models. Let me see. Let me fill this in here. Okay. All right. Isn't that cool, Steph? I like that you did it like that.
Okay. I didn't do the tooling. I just did the format spec. So I wrote the
In
spec for
my
the format.
head, you did it. So
Oh, okay. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
but big props to the engineering team that made this happen, though, in all honesty. So with that said, yeah, that top ID is going to be what we'll get once the agent's deployed. But down here, once we get past tags and into model, the ID field that we have here first is going to be for the model itself. That's going to be the same model name for when you did the model deployment, and that's the model that the agent's going to use. And then we need to provide instructions for the agent too. So the agent that I already have created that I'll demo for you all in a bit, I actually used a feature that I won't get a chance to go through it all today with you all, but
Right.
it's within the AI Toolkit extension. They have a prompt builder in there. And they have a prompt builder where you can describe very briefly what sort of prompt you want to create, and then like it outputs like a very like well crafted prompt. And we'll take a look at the actual prompt in a bit, but that's like as a heads up that if you need help with prompts, prompt builder within AI Toolkit super helpful for that. So in
I
this
love it.
case, though, I can put some instructions for the agent. I would just say you're a friendly assistant. It seems to be like the default that a lot of people use. You're a friendly assistant. And then from there, we then can select the tools that we want to add. So for the tools, just like when you're working in the browser in Foundry, you can add tools such as grounding with being searched, which is one that I used in the agent. I'll show you in a little bit as well. I'm blanking on all the other ones right now, Seth. I know we have a search tool as well, but what else do we have?
So there's a code interpreter. There
Yes.
is a grounding with Bing, and there's a grounding. You can actually ground to Fabric or to Azure AI Search for knowledge, and then you on the actions you can do tools like Open API calls to other things. If I remember right, I think I'm remembering right.
Okay. No, that sounds accurate. And with that said, when you are adding tools here with the extension, you'll select this plus icon, but it's going to open things back up. So you might be wondering, like, what's going on here? What else do I need to select? Well, typically, what you would have set up is going to be a YAML file that has the information for the tool itself. I do have one. Let's see. Here we are. So this is what essentially, without sharing everything I have,
Right,
of what it
right.
would look like. But like for the grounding with Bing, for example, you're going to need that grounding with Bing resource, and then you'll create a YAML file for that and save it. And then when you get to the step for adding a tool, if you're using the extension, that's what you're going to select when you click this plus button, and then it'll associate it. I'll do it now and just for fun because I like having fun, just so you
Right.
can see. But you'll select the tool file, and then it shows up here in the tool. But also on the left, we have this here. Now, I do have an updated version without the squiggles, so I'll show you the difference on that. But for example's sake, this is how that setup would happen. And then below, we have some agent settings. And then the last thing you would do is deploy to Azure AI Foundry. It happens relatively quickly. So I'm going to show you the actual agent that I have that we can test out. But from a creation perspective, that's what it takes to create an agent in the extension itself.
I love it. Let's test one out, and then let's tell people where they can get all this goodness from.
Yeah, absolutely. So if everyone recalls, let me not save this. Back over where I have my resources and I have the agents that I have available. If you were to click on an agent, this is where you can see the information. I mentioned earlier to you that I have those instructions that I created with Prompt Builder. If I open up that YAML file, this is where you can actually see, like, AI generated this prompt, Seth. If I had to do this by myself, we'd still be waiting for me to finish generating the prompt. So
I love it.
So this one in particularly, what it does is it uses Bing to find like the latest AI news, whatever, and then it summarizes the information in the news article in plain speak for like a non-technical audience. And so to try this out, we can open it with the agent playground. If I select it here in tools on the left and I can select the agent, it's called the AI news agent in this case. And so this should hopefully look familiar if you try things already out in Foundry, but in the extension, you're going to get that similar experience. All your agent preferences are also here as well. And then if I want to say, what's the latest for the intersection of AI and fashion? So what we will get is we're going to get a response from the search that's done with Bing. And I now have an article here for virtual try-ons trending in fashion with AI. We also get some links to the resources that it's pulled this from as well. And that's our agent, Seth. Like, you can test all this out here in the extension. And there's one other part related to this. You look super excited, so I'm going to let you talk before I show you threads.
Yeah, I am excited because I'm actually building a demo that's coming up at our next conference, and I keep I can totally just use this and save myself a wee bit of time. I don't know why I did that accent, but I did.
I like
Here it
the
is.
accent.
I feel like I could do a lot of this stuff in Visual Studio Code, and then have these YAML files live as part of my project.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You definitely
Which is
could.
awesome.
So if I were having more conversations with the agent, I would start to be able to see more of the messages show up here in this thread section. Let me make this a little bigger. I can see where things might have failed. So I had one that kind of failed earlier. But if I open up one of these threads, and this is an area that I'm honestly still getting more up to speed on, of knowing like what's what here. But within here, we do get the thread ID. We get an idea what the token count is as well. We know what tools were used too, which is helpful. So if you have multiple tools, we'll see which one was actually utilized here. And then we also get the response itself. And we have some step details that we can also go through as well, that we can check out. So yeah, this is in a nutshell, Seth, like the things you can do right now within the Azure AI Foundry extension.
If people don't know what threads are basically the conversation history that you have with an agent, and it's internal stuff. And so I'm using this a lot to debug this app that I'm building. It's cool that actually in the extension you get more information than you do on the website currently. This will likely change, and so the fact that I'm able to do this is going to change my workflow even today, because I'm still working on I'm finalizing some of the agents that I'm working on. So this is absolutely excellent. I love it. So just to finish up here, where can people go to find out more, or where can people get the extension?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can get that within the marketplace itself for Visual Studio Code. And I see we have a lovely link available there for folks to check out. Do go download it, give it a try. And I did mention in that help and feedback section, there is a link to the repo itself there for any issues that you might run into. But give it a try. Even if you're brand new to Foundry, give it a try.
And here's some docs that I want to make sure we put up. One of them is for using the extension, working with it. So make sure you go to that. And then the second one you gave me was this one, which is working with the AI agent service, because there's two things in there. And then there was a GitHub repository that you gave me. What's in this repository?
Yes, so this is going to be the repo for the extension itself. So anytime you have if you run into any issues, for example, definitely submit an issue there within the issue section of the repo. And one of the folks from the team will check that out, help you get unblocked as well. So do check that out. The other thing I do want to call out are the other two documentation links that you shared. Literally what I went through today is what's in those docs. So if someone's watching this and now they want to go back and watch it again, you can literally kind of map one-to-one to see where you can actually go and try different things with the models or the agents.
And then finally, if people want to be part of a developer community for that, here we're starting one up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So over in GitHub, we have a Azure AI Foundry discussion section within the Azure AI Foundry Developer Forum. Do come check that out. We have folks from Cloud Advocacy, which is the org I'm in. We have folks from Product that's also there as well. We're building up a really lively and engaging community where folks can come and ask their questions, give feedback about our Foundry products. And also there's a show and tell section, and I love a good show and tell.
Yes.
So if you want to share projects that you're working on, you can also contribute that too. We'd love to have anyone come and engage within the discussions. And so definitely check that out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us, April.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for watching. We're learning all about Azure AI Foundry extension for Visual Studio Code. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care. All right. Thank you so much for being with us, my friends. We saw Semantic Kernel with Shawn Henry, and then we saw Visual Studio Code extension for Azure AI Foundry with our friend April Spate. Next time on the AI Show, make sure you tune in. May 12th, we're going to be looking at the Azure AI Content Understanding, how to get started with it. And then my friend Tim Huckabee is going to come on to talk about Lucy Hub. I'm pretty excited about that, so make sure you tune in to the next episode of the AI Show coming up in a week. Thank you so much for watching, and again, hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.